Welcome, folks. I'm Jabby Koei, joined by Achara Kirk.
Hello.
We're looking at new Rockstars breakdown for the latest episode of The Last of Us, Season 1, Episode 2. Thanks so much for joining us. If you're watching... I was about to go into my whole spiel about watching a show.
Yep.
So if you want to watch the show with us, which we've been doing, you can watch that on Patron or YouTube if you want to watch the whole thing with us, no cuts or interruptions. But if you want to watch the cut-down version, that's available on YouTube already. Okay, if you haven't already subscribed to New Rockstars, there's a little link in the description below for the video we're about to watch. If you want to give the original upvote, subscribe to them from there. Also, please subscribe here, bell icon, all notifications, vote this up. Okay, let's jump into this. Here we go.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and this is a breakdown of HBO's The Last of Us Episode 2, Infected. The interesting visual details, connections to the game, and deeper layers of meaning. And you know what I did mention last week? That clicker visible on the rooftop in the final shot. But you better believe Joel, Ellie, and Tess didn't miss him and his friends this episode with their mistletoe moves. But hey, I did get that flower theory right in my follow-up short. And you know what? A few of you even called me a dummy for saying the infection was spread by flower-coated Hollywood handshakes. But it's all good. We're gonna break down everything you missed. And for more of my deeper analysis, please subscribe to New Rockstar's new channel, The Deep Dive, in which every week I'll investigate titles like Everything Everywhere All at Once with a more pointed focus. It's launching February 17th. Okay, episode 2 opens in Jakarta, Indonesia, which came up on a radio broadcast last episode.
Disturbances in Jakarta, but are advised.
It's September 24th, 2003, 2 days before Outbreak Day, and you can already hear sirens starting. In this restaurant, we see close-ups of flour-based food in people's dishes, but Ibu Ratna is eating only skewered meat and a salad. When these officers enter, all the patrons go silent. Now, in 2003, Indonesia was in a period of reform under President Megawati Soekarno Putri, but this was right after a tumultuous New Order period that lasted from 1966 to 98 under Suharto, who was a military dictator. These patrons would definitely be old enough to remember a time when badges showing up during lunch meant trouble. Just really like this detail. The officer Hidayat apologizes for interrupting the lunch, and Ibu says no need, she was just finishing. Cautiously abundant courtesy, because both of these people are scared out of their minds. They're wanting the other one to like them since they believe the other holds their life in their hands. Now, Ibu is a professor of mycology, the study of fungi. The front desk translates to ministry.
Just, Ibu is like, well, as far as I understand, Ibu means mother, but I believe in this case it's also an honorific. It's not actually her first name.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, it's not her name. It's just like calling her ma'am or miss.
Health of Indonesia, and we passed signs for SARS, which earlier that year, February 2003, was the bigger infection of concern, a respiratory virus, largely in China. The authority tells Ibu to identify the specimen.
Kami butuh bantuan Bu Ratna untuk meneliti spesimen yang telah kami persiapkan.
Ibu mungkin
pendapat berat yang saya butuhkan.
Yeah, it's clear that Ibu was brought in as a second opinion.
I didn't even catch that the first time.
Better news from her. In general, I love this intro because many associate infections from other countries with a kind of xenophobic hypochondria. Oh no, can I even drink the water in that country? But we see here that it wasn't immediate.
Okay, to be fair, you have to be mindful of the water in other countries. It can get you sick if your body's not acclimated to it.
Your body's just not used to it. That's all.
Yeah.
Like I used to get really surprised when people told me they'd come to Thailand and then they would use bottled water to brush their teeth, and I'm like, but why?
Chaos in the streets of Jakarta, an academic expert in Ground Zero diagnosed it immediately and still could not stop it. Ibu examines his corpse and first notices a bullet wound in the head, not a good sign. She makes an incision on the leg, revealing a layer of Cordyceps tissue directly beneath the skin, which is crazy. It's like the stuffing of a plush toy.
Yeah.
This means it's not muscle tissue that's moving the limbs of the infected, it's just all fungus tendrils underneath there. And she checks the throat and yuck, living Cordyceps tendril reaches out for a hug. Even through Ibu's plastic protective suit, the fungus knows that she's there. As she flees from the room, the tendrils continue to reach upward out of the mouth. This scene reminded me a lot of the autopsy scene in The Silence of the Lambs when they realized that the moth cocoon was embedded in the victim's throat. It's sickening, but it's also the key clue that Clarice later uses to identify Buffalo Bill, and here in this scene, foreshadowing the kiss of death that will take Tess. Hidayat confirms the transmission happened 30 hours prior at a flour and grain factory on the west side of Jakarta, and Ibu calls it the perfect substrate. The substrate meaning a surface or material on which an organism can live. This confirms my theory that the fungus is spread by flour in the food supply. Jakarta has the world's largest flour mill.
He keeps cutting back to his Instagram reel, or was it a TikTok?
Yeah.
Just to he feels so vindicated.
He's like, yes, all you suckers were like, that is so dumb. But listen, he called it, okay?
In last episode, Sarah noted that they were out of pancake mix. The Adlers offer biscuits that Joel turned down. Ms. Adler makes raisin cookies that Sarah
Wow.
hates. We get a close-up of the heat rising and those cookies growing. And later that night, Joel forgets to pick up cake. Now this shot of Ibu is an extended multi-minute take, and I just love that we never cut away and we have to stay with her in this horror for this whole unbroken moment. Ibu attempts some contact tracing, learning that they don't know who bit the woman before the factory, and then learns...
Lalu pekerja yang lain bagaimana?
14 orang hilang.
I was getting so into the moment, and then that thing popped
the moment
up.
she hears 14, her hand rattles the tea.
Yeah.
She never takes a sip of it either, afraid to ingest anything. Like Dr. Newman in episode 1, Ibu says that there is no treatment possible, and instead just looks at this military officer to give him one solution that he'll understand.
Bom. Mulailah pengoboman.
Yeah, and I like how even in another language, the word is the same, bomb. And it's the same solution the Americans try on their own cities.
Is this where they bombed?
Yeah, they hit most of the big cities like this. They had to slow the spread somehow. It worked here, but it didn't in most places.
So then we open on Ellie sleeping in the fetal position, surrounded by green moss, just a pure natural state like a fetus in utero, the next stage of human evolution potentially resistant to the fungus. A butterfly flaps past her, recalling the butterflies on Sarah's pillowcase, as Ellie supplants Sarah as the daughter figure that Joel must protect. Butterflies are symbols of transformation, from the caterpillar to the cocoon, metapod to butterfree! And as the world goes through biological transformations around them, these characters must undergo psychological transformations in order to adapt and to survive.
I think butterflies look so much prettier far away. Up close, they look so scary.
You're afraid of insects, aren't you?
I'm not a fan. I'm certainly, not their homies. It's like just up close, butterflies, I'm like...
Change is inevitable. Now, this room used to be a salon. If you look at the door, that's Supercuts. This would be a place where you do get makeovers and transform your look. That's a magazine that you flip through for
so many levels.
That Tess tosses Ellie to use as toilet paper. Now, like Professor Ibu, Joel's hand also trembles, but from his savage beating of that soldier the night before, he is shaking because for the first time in decades, he feels something.
You need to stop talking about this kid like she's got some kind of life in front of her.
He's trying to stifle the affection he's feeling by liking Ellie with Sarah and how quickly Sarah's future was snuffed out. Now, Tess is really interesting to watch in this scene because notice how overnight she's become a true believer.
Yeah.
She made it through the night.
It doesn't matter.
Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann revealed that they actually wrote and shot a whole backstory for Tess that they ultimately removed. Tess was a wife and a mother, and both her husband and her son got infected. She had to kill her husband, but she couldn't bring herself to kill her kid, so she just locked him in the basement. And presumably, he's now a clicker, according to Mazin. So Tess's newfound hope for Ellie, her hope for redemption, and for all the shit she's done, is grounded in what she did to her family.
Hold on. The guy who put his tendrils into her mouth.
Yeah.
We don't know who that is, right?
Not yet, no.
That has not been identified. So, you know what I'm saying?
You think that's her son?
I don't know.
You weirdo.
I'm not the one who made that. They did. I'm just...
No! Why would her son age?
How old was her son?
I don't know. I just assume that he's a child.
He could have been 40.
Wow.
She could have had him when she was like 5.
Yeah, that makes sense. It definitely shows the whole backstory because we were remarking on how she felt like such a well-rounded character. And while I wouldn't put it past Anna Torv to do all of the work and the backstory and all of that, it definitely helps if you've got this whole backstory written out for you already and maybe you've done the work and they shot scenes and stuff, then it's in your body.
Yeah.
And so it really shone through in the performance. So even if they did cut it out.
Post-apocalyptic Boston looks incredible, with vines growing out everywhere from the crumbling buildings and the corroding cars. Really smart VFX detail here. Joel's head blocks out a glare from a background building window, tricking our brains into thinking everything in the background is practical and affecting us physically.
True.
But in reality, that leaning skyscraper is totally VFX. Like in the game, the atmosphere is immersive, and the production designers just did a really good job blending the foreground practical sets and the background VFX, so you don't really know where the line is. The police car they pass is the Boston PD Ford Expedition, the make, model, and paint job even that Suffolk County cops used in the year 2003. They also step past a stuffed giraffe, which could be a nod to the giraffe that you run into and give a good boy pat in the game. Ellie tells Tess that she was bitten after sneaking into the boarded up mall in the QZ.
So it was just you in there alone?
Yeah.
Yeah, Ellie sniffs because there is more to that story, which I'll get to at the end in Spoiler Corner. Ellie also shares some myths that she's heard.
So there aren't super infected that explode fungus spores on you?
Shit, I hope not.
Or ones with split open heads that stay in the dark like bats?
The second kind refers to clickers. And yeah, definitely we're gonna meet a few of them in this episode. I'll talk about the various stages of infected in spoiler corner, just in case you want to be surprised by what's coming. I love how this hotel has become an entirely new ecosystem, a swampy pond. A frog perches on the keys of the piano, creating that diegetic horror score.
Yeah.
Later, Ellie adds to this music when she gets scared by the corpse. Every bottle and glass they pass in the hotel now has plant life growing out of it, as water and nutrients would have collected inside and created a sort of petri dish ecosystem for life to form. Joel gives Tess a boost so that she can crawl through the cave-in. Joel and Tess giving each other boosts and pulling each other up on ledges like this is just a common move that you do in this early section of the game. Yeah. Joel and Ellie have this moment alone, and Ellie asks how long infected live.
Well, some last about a month or two. But there's others been walking around about 20 years.
Yeah, a bit of foreshadowing for some longtime infected hosts whose fungal layers just keep growing and growing. Again, I'll explain more of this in spoiler corner. The three of them look down and see rows of infected laying down below.
The last time we were here, they were still deep inside the buildings. Then I guess enough people came through looking for the QZ. We went inside seeking shelter. And that's how they get more and more of the city bit by bit, year after year.
So this tells us that the Boston QZ is not necessarily secure permanently, and explains why Joel and Tess were ready to leave it even before meeting Ellie. The infected all react to sunlight in a wave.
They're connected.
More than you know, the fungus also grows underground. Long fibers like wires, some of them stretching over a mile. You step on a patch of cordyceps in one place, and you can wake a dozen infected from somewhere else.
Okay, so this whole idea of Cordyceps hive mind, like the neural chemical network of Pandora and Avatar, is a new thing in the HBO series. It's not something really in the game, or at least not established yet. We probably know by now if it was, but to be clear, when we're using a term like hive mind, we should separate the idea of mind from the idea of cognition. Behind the scenes at New Rockstars, our sales guy Berg was giving me an amazing lecture on this subject. Both the idea of a mind and the idea of cognition are metaphysical concepts debated by scientists, especially when it comes to things like AI.
Those scientists specifically
are sentient the way humans are and are working collectively to outsmart us and hunt us, but they do collectively react to environmental stimuli and are capable as a colony of living for years and years and years and accomplishing some complex things. But at that point you get to the debate of, well, are humans just reacting to environmental stimuli? Like, I don't know, I get hungry at sundown, sleepy at midnight, and every time my wife revs up the microwave, I piss my pants and forget who I am for a half hour or so. But this change in the show accomplishes two things. One, there's some thematic takeaway here that Cordyceps is beating us by being more communicative and better connected than humanity is, like arguably the more worthy species of taking over planet Earth. But two, it gives the fungi a ranged threat that you could say they lose by the show omitting the spore component of them. This is just a new way that the fungus can get us.
You're not immune from being apart.
Now, in the museum, they pass displays of the Boston Tea Party and portraits of founding fathers, all covered in dried cordyceps, as if all of American history was rendered pointless by a fungal infection that swallowed our entire society. The infected corpses they pass still bear some human features that are just eerily preserved. Because
that is kind of wild to think about. When you put it in that perspective, it's like there's a very thin line between how much everything matters and then it's no longer existing.
Yeah, I mean, if this happened in the world, very quickly you would be like, all of this stuff, culture, history, art, whatever, doesn't matter anymore. It's gone.
Yeah.
We're afforded all of this because we're comfortable now. But if we're struggling to survive, probably not.
Well, I mean, the way we function, we experience time in such a way that it feels long. I mean, even when as you get older and you go, oh my gosh, it flies by. It's like, yeah, but it still feels long. Yeah, that's pretty wild to think about. I sort of had a weird existential moment there when he was talking about that. I'm like, whoa, just like so quickly, things can just stop mattering.
Well, it's funny how he's making a lot of existential parallels as well, because I never thought about how maybe the show is saying that, if we communicated better like the Cordyceps did, maybe we deserve a chance at surviving. I'm like, that never crossed my mind as a theme.
If we just didn't have unique personalities, we just all thought the same thing, everything would be all right.
If we just worked for the collective, it'd be okay.
Because as we saw before, the muscle tissue beneath the skin gets replaced by the fungus, so that delays the decomposition that our bodily fluids would have caused. They end up trapped in a room with two clickers. Now, these are the blind infected individuals formed by the fungus splitting open their heads, and like bats, they use echolocations like clicks to perceive their surroundings. Now, last week, my buddy Ryan Airy at Screen Crush pointed out the motif of ticking clocks in the episode 1 flashbacks, and you may have noticed when Sarah dies, Joel's watch breaks and freezes on the exact moment of her death. And now, in this moment, I loved hearing how the clockwork ticking of the old world has been replaced with sporadic random clicking of the clickers.
I completely forgot how Joel's watch broke exactly. For some reason, like I should have known that, and I forgot. I forgot that it happened during that incident.
Right.
I thought maybe it just broke at some point during the 20 years that had elapsed.
Also a possibility, but yes.
No, but I mean, he clearly showed it right there. I was like, oh yeah.
Because now time truly has no meaning. Ellie, though, is unable to silence her own gasp. Notice how this clicker, compared to other infected runners or stalkers, wears clothes that are more worn down. That's because to get like this, clickers must have been infected for over a year, longer than most other infected that we see. His wet and slimy head has had its skull split down to the top row of teeth in the palate, but the fungus has otherwise left the mouth intact because it needs the mouth for oral transmission. When Joel shoots the chest, it's ineffective because the fungus doesn't feel pain and really doesn't need any of the vital organs that would have been in the chest region, only really the brain, the brainstem. Joel removes the bullets from his revolver. Just the little sound of the shells alerts that clicker. And I love how the camera stays on Joel as the clicker starts to move toward us, but frames it out so that, like Joel, we just have to guess where it is.
I knew where it was.
Yeah.
It was right there. No, but the thing about it is the little shell things, like it's like that little thing alerts the clicker from presumably like 15 feet away, right? But when the clicker is right there and they're just shuffling on the ground, I'm like, how does the clicker not hear that? That's so loud.
I was wondering about that because when he was talking about how they use echolocation to see, as it were, right? I was thinking, well, if you were just hiding there, surely if you made even one move, they would be able to use echolocation and notice that something was shifting.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I feel like echolocation would grant you so much more of an understanding of what's around you, including this is different than it was before.
That's
like,
why Daredevil is badass.
Yeah, there's a bump right there that wasn't there before in terms of the way the sound is stopping.
Yeah.
So yeah, like they would know where you are. I feel like even if you didn't move, they might still know where you are if they've mapped it out like a Roomba.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And they upped the volume on those clicks to signal to us that he is now just a few feet away around the corner. So Joel, having faced these things before, knows how to use the clicker's own echolocation methods to echolocate it. And notice how we don't see where Tess is for most of the sequence, how she loses her clicker, just a little warning sign that something probably went down off screen with her. Now Tess says there's no going back home. And notice how their path through this museum caves in behind them, which is similar to the experience of playing the game. And many games, really, your path closes off behind you and there's only one path forward. It's just so sad to rewatch this episode from here forward for Anna Torv's performance, like when Joel wraps tape around her foot and she just looks at him with tears in her eyes.
There's probably more ahead.
So we'll deal with it then.
Tess gets a moment alone, and her hand does twitch a bit. Not sure if it's voluntary or not, but muscle spasms are a symptom. And notice how Tess yelps in pain when her arm on the side where the bite is grabs the ladder. Joel, after watching Ellie go down the ladder, very suddenly looks down at his watch, unable to look at Ellie without thinking of his daughter Sarah. Tess walks ahead of them toward the state house, more in a rush than they are, and to hide her shoulder bite. Notice how when she turns around, you can see blood sprayed on her neck. Joel doesn't notice because he's too busy looking at Ellie's more recent scratch, worried that she's gonna turn. So when they get to the state house, they find everyone dead already, which is another contrast from the games. In the games, Tess has to hold all this down as Fedra soldiers come in, and there's a big shootout. But like last episode, this series shows the heroes in the present day stumbling upon the aftermath of the human versus human shootouts, instead of taking out person after person like you do sometimes in the game, except for specific moments from Joel. Here, Joel explains what happened.
One of them got bit, the healthy ones fought the sick ones, everyone lost.
And Tess reveals her infected bite and compares it to Ellie's scratch that has no effect.
This is real. Josh is real. I need you to get her to Bill and Frank's.
And yes, Tess's hand tremor is more severe now. Tess says,
I never ask you for anything, not to feel the way I felt, not to you shut the up because I don't have time.
It's just so tragic. In her final minutes, she doesn't even have time to profess her love for Joel because she knows that they missed their window. And she continues,
you get her there, you keep her alive, and you set everything right. All the shit we did.
Yes, Tess sees the promise of Joel getting Ellie to safety and a possible cure to Cordyceps as her one hope for redemption. Joel shoots the infected host, and the Cordyceps in the soil latches onto his hands. We see the fungal colony at work. Similar tendrils snake under a fingernail, lifted a little. I know. But the dinner bell has been rung. Actually, the stalker we see here up close is the same one that'll eventually plant the smooch on Tess. Tess sets up the place to blow up and has this final moment with Joel.
Say who you can say.
You can tell that Joel totally wants to give her a goodbye kiss right now, but at this point, a kiss with an infected is a kiss of death.
Exactly.
It's the closest they get, and all the infected arrive, and this stalker closes it for a kiss. And in addition to the undeniable grossness of the tendril transmission, it's just an additional violation because a kiss is such an intimate gesture. Now, this actor's named Philippe Bertucci, and look how this guy looks. When you lose that fungal makeup, hello there. So this kiss just feels like an especially cruel perversion, reminding me of the overtly sexual design of the xenomorph anatomy in Alien. This is another example of the showrunner's subversive theme of the series, the danger of love. This kiss is
oh my god.
And even from the perspective of the Cordyceps, it is a kind of loving embrace. It's one piece of the fungus recognizing and connecting with another piece of the fungus. Yet that love is destructive and violent. And let's never forget that. But Tess is able to bring the suffering to an end by finally igniting the lighter, which she drops thanks to her hand's muscle spasms. And so the room explodes, bringing us back to Professor Ibu's only real solution.
I wanted to just comment on something real quick about the action, because he remarked about how it's different from the game, because in the game you have these encounters with adversaries, soldiers and whatnot. That's the second time that we've experienced that in the show, where they come into a room and stuff has already gone down. I'm just wondering how you feel about that, how the audience feels about that. I personally think it's cool. You sacrifice that action sequence in favor of something way more frightening, which is the revelation of it's the payoff from what was spoken about earlier, where the hand touches the little fungus on the ground, which communicates to all the other ones and all the other clickers and whatnot. I think that's a great trade-off, but I wanted to know how you guys feel about that trade-off and like not having action twice like that and just walking into Aftermath twice.
I wonder if maybe they're just saving that for a little bit later. That's number one, where we're just focusing on the Cordyceps right now, what it can do, just kind of setting up that exposition and establishing that is really scary, like you said, and not distracting from that by having it be, but there's also like this human element. Because I think at some point that's got to come into play, right? Unless they're trying to deviate completely from this type of genre, which I know some people are kind of upset when people say like, it's like a zombie show or something, because they never use the word zombie, they're just called infected, right? But generally in these types of shows, it shines the light back on humanity and says that actually maybe we're the monsters.
Right.
And I wonder if that is something thematically that they're going to bring up, because like Erik is saying, they're talking about the theme of love and how love can actually be a force for destruction and not just something for good.
By them making it fungi, and it's these tendrils that kind of reach out, I think that takes it out of the realm of being zombies. Because when they first said it's not zombies, and then you play the game and it's like, it's basically zombies. By having it be tendrils, I think that it now makes it something else. And that's probably why they went that direction, or one of the reasons why they went that direction, because they really, really wanted to remove that classification of it being zombies.
Okay, on to spoiler corner. For those of you who know what...
I don't want you to see this. I don't want you to see these spoilers.
Okay, I'll leave. I enjoyed this. There were definitely things that I didn't really pick up on before. I like the exploration of this like twisted love theme.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see where it's going to go next. Now I'm like, I really want to know the spoilers, because there is a part of me that enjoys this stuff. But I didn't get that far in the game, so I guess I will dip out. Bye.
Okay, so Ellie was not the only one in the mall. Riley was there with her, but like Joel not wanting to talk about Sarah, Ellie doesn't want to talk about her lost loved one. Notice how Ellie also indicated no boyfriend is going to come looking for her. And then Ellie's mention of
I didn't catch that detail. Oh my god, I didn't catch that detail. That's nice.
Super infected that explode fungus spores on you that Tess and Joel thought was a myth, totally a nod to bloaters, one of which shows up in the trailer, so we know a bloater is coming. Bloaters bloaters are the several-year-old infected hosts with fungal layers that have formed like armor and tear chunks of that fungus off themselves to throw like spore bombs. Actually, early in the game, there is a Fedra handout showing the stages of infected, from runner to stalker to clicker to, and then the bloater stage is torn off. Now, there's also a stage infected later in the games called shamblers that are found near water that spray spore clouds. But really, in general, this whole talk of a hive mind and some infected being 20 years old, the full length of the pandemic, maybe the show at least indicating to viewers or people who have played part 2 that things are gonna eventually get to the Rat King from part 2 of the games. The Rat King is a freakish 20-year-old beast in the Seattle area made up of multiple infected hosts fused together. He is one of the most frightening bosses of the game. While I definitely don't think the Rat King is gonna come in season 1, this has gotta be something the show's gonna get to in season 2 or season 3.
I thoroughly enjoyed that breakdown. That was very informative about stuff that I had missed out or didn't pick up on first time around watching the episode, or even some stuff from the game, like he just pointed out with the little sign. I thought that was super neat. It's like these little details all throughout. Has any one of you ever played Last of Us and noticed that all the water coolers are the exact same water cooler? I noticed that every time I play through the game, where you know how you have a blue handle and a red handle? The blue one is always broken in every single water cooler. I don't know if the updated Last of Us for PlayStation 5 is any different, but for PlayStation 3 and 4, I feel like even on PlayStation 4, the same water cooler was used the entire time. And it's one of those things where, kind of like when you see an NPC again within a small radius, it kind of just, it's like it reminds you you're playing a game. It sort of takes you out of it a little bit. That would happen to me with the water coolers, but that's me paying attention to details, which you're supposed to do with a game like that and a show like this. I was actually asking a question to Acharo during our reaction about the watch, and I was like, why would he look down at the watch in that moment? And he explained it here. So lots of fun details. I appreciate New Rockstars doing this. It helps to get a better understanding of the full intent of what the filmmakers are trying to do with this show. Anyways, would love to hear your opinions in the comments below. Thanks so much for hanging out. I'm Jabby Kawai. Peace out.